Okay, today we're going to be finding the lowest common multiple. Actually, yeah, and a lot of times I've also heard it the least, that word least, but that's okay. And which is the same as finding your common denominator. Do you remember that we were adding those fractions with the letters in them, and you've been dividing them and everything?
Oh, yeah.
And you've been adding them without common denominators. And now they're going to show you how to find the least common multiples, so eventually we can get to adding them and finding their common denominators. So today we're going to use this. You're going to practice this a while before we actually use them to find your common denominators, okay? And so we're going to be practicing with just numbers, okay? So if we have the number 12 and we have the number 18, before we start to find the least common multiple, which is the LCM, we're going to do their prime factors, which is like doing their factor trees, if you remember. We break them down into 4 and 3 and 2 and 2. That's how we got this 2 squared 3.
Okay.
Yeah. 18 is the same way. We have a 2 and the 9, and we break that to 3 and 3. That's how we got this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. When we're finding the least common multiple, this sounds backwards. But it's one of the multiples that they're in common, but it's the lowest one. But to find that, when we're doing our prime factors, we take the highest of the ones in common. And so I've got some 2's here. Okay? To find the least common multiple, I compare 2 squared and 2. And which one's the highest?
2 squared.
2 squared.
Oh.
Okay. Oops. Let me do that one more time. All right, we have our LCM. We took our 2 squared. Of these 2 here, that was a squared.
Yeah.
Very good. Of those,
the second one is
there we go. Of these, we have the squared that's the greatest, right? So then we multiply the 3 squared. So that's going to be 4. And this is going to be 9. So our least common multiple is going to be 36. So if we had a fraction, 1/12 plus 1/18, we could just multiply those 2 together and get a really large number. But it would be better to use 36 as our common denominator because that is our lowest common multiple. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's do some with letters now because that's what you've been going to be doing. Okay. So we've got 9 and 15, and we have the x squared y and xy cubed. All right. We have to of the 9 and the 15, we're going to do our factor trees. Okay. 9 is going to be 3 squared.
Right.
Okay. And 15. If we did that out, we'd have just 5 and 3, right? Okay. So we have our 5 and our 3, okay? And so we don't have a 5 to compare up here. Remember, we're taking the highest? So we have no 5s up there. It's kind of like having 5 to the 0 power, because 5 to the 0 power is just 1, right? So remember, we're taking the highest.
So 5.
So our least common multiple would be 5.
And then 3 squared.
3 squared.
And then you have to do your letters too, right?
Very good. So for our numbers, so that's for our numbers. Now we have an x squared and an x. What's the highest?
X squared.
X squared. And our y cubed.
Y cubed.
Y cubed.
So then it'll be 45 x squared y cubed.
Right. Okay, not too hard.
No.
So if you were finding the common denominator, if this had like a 1 over it and a 1 over it, the common denominator for this would be 45x squared y cubed.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Let's do another one. This time, we have 2 polynomials, not just monomials. We had a monomial. This is a monomial right here. There's no add and subtract between them. And this time we have a subtract between both of those, okay?
Oh boy.
So when we are finding their factors, we're going to have to factor them like you've been factoring before, like taking out the least common multiple. The greatest common factor, and taking out or finding the box method in factoring. Okay.
Okay.
And so, what can I take out of 12x to the third and 6x squared?
6x squared.
6x squared.
And
what will be left?
2x.
2x. Careful. So 6x squared times what gives me 6x squared?
1.
Very good.
Sorry.
So minus 1 is all right. So that's my first one. And now I have to factor this second one.
So then 4x squared.
4x squared.
And then you'll be left with 2x minus 1.
Okay, now we're going to compare. Okay? Now we're going to compare. Our 6, we're going to have to break this down even more. 6 can be, is 2 times 3 times x squared times 2x minus 1. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
4 is 2 squared, x squared, 2x minus 1. Okay, so we're going to compare now.
Wait a minute. Wouldn't it No,
You got it? You
Yeah,
got it?
you're right, yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to compare our 2's. Which is the highest, 2 or 2 squared?
2 squared.
2 squared. Okay. So we'll have our least common multiple will be 2 squared. We're going to compare our 3's. I have a 3 and no 3's. What's the most?
3.
3. Okay.
And then x squared.
X squared, because we're comparing those two, and they both have an x squared. And we're comparing these.
And they're the same, so you'll just do 2x minus 1.
Okay, so now we have to multiply this all together. What's 2 squared times 3?
6.
6.
No.
No?
I'm sorry. 12.
Yeah, 12. X squared. 2x minus 1 is my least common multiple. Took a little bit more. So when we do these with the add and subtract in there, we have to first check them if we can take the greatest common factor. I keep saying greatest common factor out, and then even to see if we have to do the box method after that. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. We're going to do the box method. These are trinomials. Okay. So can I take the greatest common factor out of any of these? Can I take something out of all of them? At least this first one. We'll do this first one here.
You can't do that.
Can't.
So you have to do box method.
That's right. So I'm going to go x and x.
And 4 and 1.
4 and 1.
So x plus 4.
Does 4 and 1 make 4?
No. 2 and 2.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So I'm going to have, for that first one, I'll have x plus 2 squared.
Right.
Okay. This one, we'll have x and x. What?
2 and 3.
2 and 3. Oh, well, I can also have 6 and 1. Does 6 and 1 make 5?
Oh, yeah.
So which one do I pick? 2 and 3 or 6 and 1?
Does it matter?
It does. 6 and 1, do they add to 5?
No.
And so, but it's a positive. They could both subtract because they could be both negative.
But then it would be negative 5 there.
Yes, or it would be negative 7 in that case, really. So
it has to be 2 and 3.
yes, and you were right the first time. So this other one is going to be x plus 2 and x plus 3. Now we have to find the least common multiple between these ones. So we're going to compare.
So it'll be x plus 2 squared times x plus 3.
We take the highest amount of, and then between these two, it's a square. That's correct. And since there is one of here but none here, we take the highest. One is more than none. X plus 3. This is my least common multiple. Okay.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
So we just break it down into its factors, and we did that originally with these numbers, and that's the prime factors. And we took the highest of everything. This one we had to then break it down with our letters. Now we had to factor it, taking out the greatest common factor and breaking it down as small as we could. And these we might have to do the box method.
Okay.
Okay? All right, we're done.